Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Madhava Shri Radha Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundara ki Jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balarama ji ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Srila Gurudeva ki Jai, Nitai Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you for being here today for our evening Bhagavad Gita class. Today we'll be speaking on the 9th chapter, text 4. I'll just find it here. Oh, here. All right. Mayā tatam idaṁ sarvam jagad avyakta-mūrtinā mat-sthāni sarva-bhūtāni na cāhaṁ teṣv mayā tatam idaṁ sarvam jagad avyakta-mūrtinā mat-sthāni sarva-bhūtāni na cāhaṁ teṣv mayā tatam idaṁ sarvam jagad avyakta-mūrtinā mat-sthāni sarva-bhūtāni na cāhaṁ teṣv mayā tatam idaṁ sarvam jagad avyakta-mūrtinā mat-sthāni sarva-bhūtāni na cāhaṁ teṣv mayā tatam idaṁ sarvam jagad avyakta-mūrtinā mat-sthāni sarva-bhūtāni na cāhaṁ teṣv mayā tatam idaṁ sarvam jagad avyakta-mūrtinā mat-sthāni sarva-bhūtāni na cāhaṁ teṣv. Word for word and translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Mayā, by me. Tatam, pervaded. Idam, this. Sarvam, all. Jagat, cosmic manifestation. Avyakta-mūrtinā, by the unmanifested form. Mat-sthāni, in me. Sarva-bhūtāni, all living entities. Na, not. Cha, also. Aham, I. Teṣu, in them. Avasthitaḥ, situated. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Please repeat. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I'm not in them. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is not perceivable through the gross material senses. It is said, ataḥ śrī-kṛṣṇa-nāmādi na bhaved grāhyam indriyaiḥ sevonmukhe jihvādau svayam eva spurat yada. Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu 1-234. Lord Sri Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, etc. cannot be understood by material senses. Only to one who is engaged in pure devotional service under proper guidance is he revealed. In the Brahma Samhita 538, it is stated, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Vidayeshu Vilokayanti. One can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, always within himself and outside himself if one has developed the transcendental loving attitude towards him. Thus, for people in general, he is not visible. Here it is said that although he is all-pervading, everywhere present, he is not conceivable by the material senses. This is indicated here by the word avyakta-mūrtinā. But actually, although we cannot see him, everything is resting in him. As we have discussed in the 7th chapter, the entire material cosmic manifestation is only a combination of his two different energies, the superior spiritual energy and the inferior material energy. Just as the sunshine is spread all over the universe, the energy of the Lord is spread all over the creation, and everything is resting in that energy. Yet one should not conclude that because he is spread all over, he has lost his personal existence. To refute such an argument, the Lord says, I'm everywhere and everything is in me, but still I'm aloof. For example, a king heads a government which is but the manifestation of the king's energy. The different governmental departments are nothing but the energies of the king, and each department is resting on the king's power. But still, one cannot expect the king to be present in every department personally. That is a crude example. Similarly, all the manifestations that we see and everything that exists, both in this material world and in the spiritual world, are resting on the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The creation takes place by the diffusion of different energies, his different energies, and as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Vistapyaham idam Krishnam. He is everywhere present by his personal representation, the diffusion of his different energies. Om Agnati Mirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Sadharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are so fortunate to be able to read, study, hear this beautiful Bhagavad Gita, the words spoken by Lord Krishna himself, which makes this scripture very unique, because as Prabhupada explains in so many places, only God can possibly give us religion or religious process. And we're fortunate to be here in Vrindavan studying his sacred words. And it is actually really amazing how the Lord appears here in this material world. Because if you think about it, he doesn't need to come here to perform his pastimes. Goloka Vrindavan offers a much better situation for Krishna to engage with his eternal beloved associates in beautiful pastimes. But he kindly comes here and gives us his association and leaves his words and instructions so that we can feel attracted and want to, again, come to this point of loving devotional service. This verse Of course, we're speaking, in the middle section of the Bhagavad Gita, which deals with Bhakti Yoga, or the devotion to the Supreme God. And this 9th chapter is entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. So much knowledge Krishna is giving to Arjuna, to all of us, and now he's speaking the most confidential knowledge, so it deserves special attention. The verse basically speaks about Krishna's inconceivable relationship with the material world. Like I said, he doesn't really need to come here, but he comes here to give us the opportunity to hear about him and come close to him. It's just like Prabhupada gives the example. We know if a king, now they don't have kings, but a state of government, a head of the government, if he goes to the jailhouse, he's not going there as a prisoner. He's going there to give mercy to the prisoner. So similarly, Krishna comes here to give us his mercy. So this verse addresses Krishna's inconceivable relationship with the material world. Srila Prabhupada immediately points out two different things. He says that the material senses cannot actually appreciate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the only way to possibly understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is if one has developed some love towards him. So how to achieve that? Here in the 9th chapter, like we know already from, in the 7th chapter, Krishna has given some bio data of himself, just to really reassure Arjuna about who he is. It's like if we start a new job in any company, or we go to any school, or we need to give a lecture, somebody will introduce us, or oftentimes we have to introduce ourselves. We have to talk about ourselves, who we are, our credentials. So Krishna is doing like that. He's telling Arjuna his credentials, and to make him better understand. So actually the main point here in this purport is this conception of achintya bheda bheda tattva, inconceivably the same and different. Because Krishna is saying, by my unmanifested form, that means by his energy, this entire universe is pervaded. Everything is in me, but I'm not in them. So how to understand that? Srila Prabhupada is explaining very nicely. Here Krishna is using the word avyakta-mūrtinā, which means he's talking about his opulence. He's giving knowledge of his unique position. I took, in order to help me understand this purport a little bit better, I took help from Srimad Bhagavatam. The very first two purports of the first canto are just really power-packed with so much information as to who is the Supreme Lord. So in the second verse, Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 2, in the purport, Prabhupada explains something about this achintya bheda bheda tattva philosophy. He says, nothing is apart from the substance, but at the same time, the energies are different from the substance. So everything is related to Krishna because he's the cause of everything material and everything spiritual. And so his energy is non-different, but it is different. The energies alone cannot exist. The energy is dependent on the original cause. So nothing is apart from the substance, but at the same time, the energies are different from the substance. And then Srila Prabhupada also says, the energy of the Lord is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. It's easy to understand. Like if we feel warmth, if we feel heat, we can understand there must be something to do with fire near us. Even this electricity, like, these lights, they're emitting some warmth because the energy is there. So, similarly, the existence of this material world, just this material energy, means the Supreme Lord must exist. The energy has a source, which is in God. So the energy of the Lord is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. But the energy cannot exist without its original source. So then Srila Prabhupada goes to explain the devotee is fully aware that he is one with the Absolute. This gets very much misunderstood, this oneness with the Absolute Truth. People then jump to the conclusion, if I'm one with God, that makes me God. Isn't it? There's so many people, they're thinking like that. Even just recently I heard somebody say, oh yes, in Indian Hindu philosophy is wonderful. They have so many gods because we all want to have a different idea of who is God, so God makes himself available in so many varieties. But ultimately, we worship these different gods, but eventually we have to drop them because we come to the highest understanding that we are one with God. Isn't it? There's a lot of this kind of impersonal Mayavad philosophy prevalent because it's convenient. If I don't believe in the original source, if I just take shelter of the energy, then I don't have to actually come to this point of submission. I don't have to come to this point of surrender to a higher authority. I can still do any damn nonsense that I like. Prabhupada would say like that, right? So the devotee is fully aware that he's one with the Absolute in quality. Prabhupada tells, just like you take a drop of water from the ocean, it has the same chemical constituents as the ocean, but there's a vast difference in size, of course. So similarly, a devotee is one with the Absolute in the sense that we're also part and parcels, tiny parts and parcels. Prabhupada gives the example of a fire and sparks flying from the fire. The sparks are the same as the fire, but if the spark flies out from the fire, they soon get extinguished. They don't have that same power. So the devotee is fully aware that he's one with the Absolute, and at the same time in the eternal position of servant to the Absolute. This is the part, people like to accept the first part, that we are one with the Absolute. But they don't want to accept the second part, which means I'm eternally, Prabhupada says, eternal position of the servant to the Absolute. Krishna is always the master, and I'm always the servant. We're always in a servant position. Krishna is the maintainer. I'm to be maintained. Krishna is the controller. I'm to be controlled. And that is an eternal, absolute truth. If in a simple way we can just accept this concept, then Prabhupada explains in so many places, all of our material suffering, all of our material encumbrances are solved. There's no more issue because we've come to the fact of accepting that there's the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead. I'm a part of him, but always in the position of servant. Now, as Prabhupada points out here with this verse, Premanjara Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, this service to the Lord is rendered in pure consciousness of one's spiritual identity. So if I can understand who I am, what is my spiritual identity? Jivera Svarupahoy Nityara Krishna Das. If I can understand that and I cultivate that understanding, that means I come to pure consciousness, then by that service one is immediately freed from all material encumbrances. All of the suffering, all the jivas have in this material world is only because of this one misunderstanding, that they don't know how there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that our position is always, in all situations, in the position of a servant to Him, like that. So we can understand, so Srila Prabhupada, he's quoting from Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu, text 1 to 234. When you go to the Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu, this verse Rupa Goswami is giving in relationship to the holy name. Srila Prabhupada discusses this in Nectar of Devotion in chapter 12. As we can understand, 64 angas of devotional activities are listed by Rupa Goswami, and in chapter 12 and 13, when you check the Nectar of Devotion, 5 most important items are singled out, namely engaging in chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with pure devotees, coming to the holy dham, and engaging in the worship of the deity. But this verse that Srila Prabhupada here is quoting follows the verse 1 to 233, where Rupa Goswami explicitly explains that the holy name is the means and the goal to bhakti. Prabhupada gives a long purport in chapter 12 under the holy name, explaining very nicely about the potency of the holy name. These different angas are given to show us this process of sadhana, because as we just heard, this service to the Supreme Lord has to be done in pure consciousness. So how to do that? It's a gradual process. So this process of sadhana bhakti has been given to us so that gradually we can elevate our consciousness to come to our own spiritual identity, like that. So the verse that comes prior to this one is also from the Padma Purana, a very, very famous verse. And it's a beautiful verse, and it's so encouraging. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Binatvan Nama Namino. You've all heard this verse. I'm sure it's also, of course, given in Harinam Chintamani, and it is specifically glorifying the holy name. So please listen to this translation. It's a very beautiful translation, because we're trying to understand how to approach the Lord, how to develop this love, to come to the Lord. First of all, how to understand Him. So the translation to this verse is, the holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna Himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. You know, there's so much importance in each of these phrases, really, that the holy name, this means the pure holy name, Shuddha-nam. If we are coming to, if we know we're making some advancement, when we come to this level of chanting Shuddha-nam, the pure holy name, and it is blissful, we will immediately feel such ananda, such bliss, which is inherent in the soul's constitutional nature. The soul by constitution is not miserable, upset, depressed, sad, in anxiety. No, the soul inherently is blissful. So the holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions. We want this spiritual benediction of developing love for Krishna. And we can do that if we can understand how the holy name is Krishna Himself. Oftentimes we have a disconnect. You know, we think, oh, we see Krishna when we stand in the temple room before the deity, then there's Krishna. Sometimes we're chanting Hare Krishna, but we are not connected. We're not internally connected, that we're absorbed thinking, I am now directly associating with Krishna. I'm speaking to him, I'm calling to him, and he's listening. Krishna is listening. It's a direct connection. And Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. So if I connect with the reservoir of all pleasure, definitely this Ananda will come to me too. So Krishna's name is complete. It is complete, like Krishna is complete. There's nothing lacking. So if we're lacking something in our spiritual life, we have to look. How am I chanting? How am I connecting? And it is the form of all transcendental mellows. So whatever rasa, here it says Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. It's the form of all transcendental mellows. So whatever relationship we inherently have or aspiring for, we can find it through the holy name. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. So we're so fortunate to be able to connect with the Supreme Lord through his name. Since Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual, it is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. The material nature is Krishna's inferior energy. So Krishna is never under the control of his own energy. You see, so similarly the holy name is never affected by the material energy, by the three modes of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. So this is the translation as Srila Prabhupada gives in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 17, text 133. So how I say it, this is the verse directly before the one that Srila Prabhupada is quoting here. So while Rupa Goswami now speaks, this ataḥ śrī-kṛṣṇa-nāmādi, na bhaved grāhyam indriyaiḥ, sevonmukhe jihvādau, spurat yada eva, svayam eva spurat yada. He's speaking that this holy name is given to us. It's so glorious, there's no doubt about it. However, he's saying, and I give the translation here as given in Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu, no one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, qualities and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. That's why it's an issue for us, because our senses are contaminated. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. So it sounds a little bit daunting at first, but actually this is beautiful. It is so beautiful. What Srila Prabhupada has done for us is just really tremendously amazing. I'll just read it again. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form and qualities and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, qualities and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. So the key word here for us is how to become spiritually saturated, right? That means completely immersed, isn't it? If I have a sponge and it can be bone dry, right? If it's a hot day, it's completely dry. But then I put it in some water and it becomes completely saturated. So how to become saturated, spiritually saturated? So the key word again here in this verse is this sevonmukhe jihvādau. You see, Srila Prabhupada, when you go to his translation in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he gives the word for word meaning. I found that interesting. He says seva-unmukhe, meaning to one engaged in his service. Jihvādau means your senses, right? One to be engaged in his service by your senses. Now in bracket, he gives a little explanation, which he sometimes does, which is interesting. Usually we don't see it because we just read the translation. But here in the word for word meaning in brackets, he then says, when a person places himself at the disposal or order of the Supreme Lord, at that time, the spiritual energy or hare gradually reveals the Lord to him. That's powerful, isn't it? It's beautiful. And he, sevonmukhe, he means just certainly this must happen. So if you can come to this understanding that I am eternally the servant of God, and that he is the absolute truth, everything emanates from him, like that. And I put myself, a person places himself at the disposal. That means I volunteer to my service to God. I accept. I want to serve you. Or order. Yes, I accept your instructions in the Shastras that you give through your sadhu sangha. I accept the orders of the Lord. And at that time, the spiritual energy, we're discussing in this verse about the superior energy and the inferior energy, right? So the superior energy, Krishna's spiritual energy or his Svarup Shakti, is made up of the Ladini potency and the Samvit potency, the bliss potency and the knowledge potency. So how does this Svarup Shakti come to us? Prabhupada says, at that time, the spiritual energy or hare. Now we're all chanting Hare Krishna, isn't it? And Prabhupada so nicely explains that this hare is, he sometimes says the address to the Supreme Lord, but through the acharyas we also understand that actually hare is Srimati Radharani, who is Krishna's superior spiritual energy. And by her grace, when this spiritual energy touches our heart, this is also explained in the Nectar of Devotion, by her grace, the Lord is gradually revealed to us. So it sounds all still a little bit lofty. How do we come from this conditioned state, of this ignorant state, to this spiritually saturated state? And when you read Srila Prabhupada's translation to this verse, ataḥ śrī-kṛṣṇa-nāmādi, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 17, text 136, he explains it, makes it so possible. He says, just simply by using your tongue. We all have a tongue. It's not an Australian tongue, it's not an Indian tongue, it's not a Russian tongue, an American tongue. We all have a tongue, and with that tongue we want to taste and we want to vibrate. So he says, just that same tongue that you've given, that you got, use it by vibrating the holy name of the Lord, because the holy name is the means and the goal. It's not that we're just chanting Hare Krishna and then when we go home back to God, whoops, bingo, I made it. I'm done chanting now. No, actually more serious chanting goes on over there, especially with Srimati Radharani, Mother Yashoda. They're all chanting the holy name. So by vibrating, by using this tongue to chant the holy name, and by simply tasting Lord Krishna's remnants, prasadam, just these two things we have to do. Just take it seriously. Really think, am I only eating prasadam, food that's been offered to Krishna, and really offered to Krishna, cooked for his pleasure, so that he has accepted it and blessed it, and I can relish his remnants? And how much am I accepting the holy name? How much am I hearing from other pure devotees that are chanting purely, so that it also will enter my heart and I can also chant purely? So just these two things we have to do. Chant the holy name and take the Lord's prasadam, and we will become spiritually saturated. And by faithfully, in a simple, humble way, we can be scholars or we can be very simple folk. By just putting our faith in this process, gradually the Lord will be revealed to us. Perhaps gradually one comes to know who Krishna really is. Like that. So then, just to emphasize, because I felt so enthusiastic, so happy about this verse, how to become saturated, I found a beautiful verse also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 19. A prayer. Let me become a sincere servant of the devotees, because by serving them, one can achieve unalloyed devotional service unto the lotus feet of the Lord. The service of devotees diminishes all miserable material conditions and develops within one a deep devotional love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this becoming saturated or developing a deep devotional love, here the clue is given. Because nobody, not only because of our senses being contaminated, but we can't approach the Lord directly. So another clue is given us that if we want to achieve this unalloyed devotional service, become a servant of the devotees of the Lord. Always seek out those devotees who are more advanced, who've practiced for a long time, who have achieved some level of purity, who are carrying Krishna in their heart, because what is in their heart can reflect over into yours. In this verse, in the Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu, in the purport to this verse that Srila Prabhupada is quoting, I saw something interesting. Jiva Goswami, of course, gives, along with Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they both give a purport to these verses. And Jiva Goswami, he points out that this sevonmukhe, he refers, he says we can take the example of Bharat Maharaj and Gajendra. Now, with Gajendra, of course, we know how he's an elephant, the king of elephants. He was Indradyumna Maharaj in a previous life. He got cursed by Agastya Muni for being disrespectful, had to take a body of an elephant. And they're somewhere in Trikuta mountains in some heavenly environment, and he's enjoying with his she-elephants, and at the same time, there's a crocodile in the river where they're bathing and having sports. And this crocodile is also, let me just think, it's a king that had enjoyed previously with his wives and whatever, and somehow or other by mistake touched the leg of some rishi who cursed him to become a crocodile. And so, the story evolves. And but he was given the blessing that if you are, killed by Gajendra, then you will be liberated from this curse. So anyhow, the point being here is that Gajendra, not being in his element, he was they fought fighting for 1,000 years, and the crocodile got, the strength over Gajendra, and he was about to lose the battle. And in that moment, I always found this so fascinating, because here's an elephant, right? Enjoying with she-elephants. He was not thinking about God. He was thinking about the other female elephants, right? But somehow or other, he came into such a suffering condition that in that moment, from a previous life, he remembered the Lord. And same with Bharat Maharaj, in the body of a deer, when he was a great king, right? But somehow or other he became attached to this baby deer. In effect, he had to take the birth of a deer, but he remembered, even in the body of the deer, he remembered the Lord and the holy name. You see, this is the potency of, Jiva Goswami is pointing this out to show how potent is the pure holy name, that no matter what situation you're in, it will spontaneously come to you and you will spontaneously remember. You know, because obviously they'd made quite some advancement in their devotional life, both Indradyumna Maharaj and Bharat Maharaj, of course. So Jiva Goswami says here, he gave up his body of a deer, about Bharat Maharaj, while smiling broadly, saying, all respects to Narayan, the Lord. So he says that this illustrates this spontaneous appearance of the Lord's name. So no matter what situation we're in and no matter what will happen in our life, if we put our faith in the holy name will always be available for us and rescue us. And this spontaneous chanting is actually the highest perfection. Do you find this interesting? I actually went to the 5th canto, chapter 14, text 45, because Jiva Goswami just gives this one line, all respects to Narayan, the Lord. But the prayer of Bharat Maharaj at that moment when he leaves the body of a deer is beautiful. It says, even though in the body of a deer, Maharaj Bharat did not forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, when he was giving up the body of a deer, he loudly uttered the following prayer. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is sacrifice personified. He gives the results of ritualistic activity. He is the protector of religious systems, the personification of mystic yoga, the source of all knowledge, the controller of the entire creation, and the supersoul in every living entity. He is beautiful and attractive. See how he's in the body of a deer, but he had full, clear conception of who is the Supreme Lord. And then he says, I'm quitting this body, offering obeisances unto him, and hoping that I may perpetually engage in his transcendental loving service. This is beautiful. I'm quitting this body. We're all going to quit our body sooner than later, right? I'm quitting this body, offering obeisances unto him, and hoping, this is our daily prayer when we're chanting our japa, that I may perpetually engage in his transcendental loving service. That's all we want. Krishna, you're the Supreme Lord, you're my master, I'm your servant. Allow your servant to serve you. How may I serve you? This is what we're chanting every morning. Now in that chapter 12, in the Nectar of Devotion, where Prabhupada discusses this verse, he quotes the Adi Purana, and I finish with that. He says, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he says, anyone, this is beautiful, devotees, listen to this, it's so encouraging. Anyone who is engaged in chanting my transcendental name must be considered to be always associating with me. And I may tell you frankly, Krishna is telling Arjuna is his best friend. He is not making anything up. He's speaking him frankly, right? Like we speak to our best friend. I may tell you frankly that for such a devotee, I become easily purchased. It's beautiful, no? So we're so fortunate. Of course, then Srila Prabhupada explains in the Purport these two different analogies just to show how Krishna is the original person and how his energies are diffusing all over his creation, just like the sun and the sunshine. And he's also giving the example of the king and how he's the head of the government. Of course, he's not there in all the government departments, but he, by his power of position, he is conscious of all that is going on in the state. Prabhupada also gives the example of a chief engineer of a construction site. Even so, the chief engineer is probably just sitting in his office making a million phone calls, but he's conscious of what's going on in every nook and corner of the construction. So we're praying every day, we're praying, please, my dear Lord, allow me to engage in your transcendental service. I just as a little sweet at the end, Srila Rupa Goswami, because we're discussing Rupa Goswami, he speaks so many beautiful verses, of course. One prayer is there, Utkali Kavalari, where he says, and this is, I feel we can all relate to this. We all sooner or later in our chanting come to this point. Where is this lowly and insignificant person? And where is that exalted state that even great devotees cannot attain? Still, a new and intense thirst for loving service now makes me tremble, he says like that. So all of our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, our Guru Janas are encouraging us to please take shelter of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. And all of our material encumbrances will be finished. Thank you, dear devotees, for being here and your attention. Has anybody got a question or a comment you'd like to make? Yes, Prabhu?
Thanks for a very, very wonderful class. I can understand a lot of effort has been done to make the notes and other things you have to put on taking very. My question is as you very rightly said, chanting and having prasad is more than enough to make our life successful. But still there is other sources which says we should read Bhagavad-gītā, Bhagavatam, we should sadhu-sangha should be there, and there are many things. So sometimes we actually myself find it very difficult to what to do, what not to do, because our mind is my intuition is very limited, and sometimes I feel chanting is enough, or knowledge is more required, sadhana is more required. So how exactly one should lead a life which can be simple and it's approachable to Krishna?
Yes, thank you for your question. I understand what you're asking. You see in Nectar of Devotion also in chapter 6, Srila Prabhupada addresses this issue of principle and details. So the principle that we discussed this evening is that we should use our tongue by always chanting the holy name and only eating Krishna's prasadam. So if you think about it, it sounds very simple, but we need help with that. So how to always chant Hare Krishna is only possible if we take sadhu sangha, take the association of devotees who are also chanting. How is it possible to only eat prasadam? We need to live in a temple environment or a devotional environment. We need to engage in deity worship where the food is cooked in pure consciousness and offered to the Lord and is available to us. You see, so there's a whole structure a whole system behind us just following this principle. Then to really have faith, to strengthen our faith in chanting every day, in only eating prasadam, we need to study the Shastra. You see? So all of these things are important. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu singled out those 5. We need to chant the holy name. We need to stay in the association of devotees. We need to engage in deity worship, be in the holy dham or in a temple environment. We need to hear and study Srimad Bhagavatam. And we need to, which one did I miss? Worship the deity. Is that what I missed? Chanting the holy name. Those 5, right? So they are interactive. Chant, really, essentially, if you're studying the Shastras deeply, essentially, only chanting the holy name is required. But how much is that possible for us? And that's why Srila Prabhupada has given this whole system based on the teachings of the Shastras and the previous acharyas. So it's not that now you just go home, oh, okay, all I have to do is chant Hare Krishna, eat prasadam. How will you be able to do that? That's the challenge. So that's why the system, the structure has to be in place. Yeah? Okay. Actually, I didn't do so much work. It's Srila Prabhupada that did all the work. If you read his purports, he guides you exactly where to look and which verses to find, you see? So you just have to look and follow up what he's pointing us in that direction. Yes?
Mataji, we are discussing about the devotional service. Devotional service means chanting, or reading, or hearing, or being...
Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Dasyam, Sakyam, what is it known? Atman, Archanam, Parasevanam. Those 9 processes given by Prahlad Maharaj. That is what is meant by devotional service. So devotional service begins with hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, offering worship, engaging in archanam, engaging in deity worship, and then giving service, dasyam, sakyam, becoming friend, accepting the Lord as your supreme friend, and atma-nivedanam, ultimately centering your full self to the Lord. So these 9 items is meant devotional service. And whatever else helps you to do those 9. That is all under the guidance of Guru, because we have different natures and different propensities. So when you study about the qualifications of Guru, he understands your capacity, your nature, the modes of nature that you're affected by, like that, and accordingly he will engage you so that your senses become purified and saturated. That's the duty of the Guru.
Finally, we came to conclusion that chanting, jihvādau, jihvādau, right? Chanting and eating Krishna Prasada.
Yes.
That is our conclusion.
Yes.
How it is related to the devotional service 9 process we deal with.
But I just explained that to him. Exactly the same thing. Can you really sit at home all day only chanting? Can you sit at home and really every day purely only take prasadam? It's not possible by yourself. That's why you need the structure of all these other items to help you to come to chanting the pure holy name and to relish the remnants of the food offered to Krishna. It is simple. Prabhupada says in the first canto, he says it right in the beginning, the process is simple, but the application is difficult. So he's very carefully thought it out of how to give us this process so that we can do it. Okay.
As Krishna says, he gives the remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness.
Yes.
So, what part is the individual living entity has, because everything is given by him. Knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness.
Your free will. Your free will. If you want to know God, He's right there in your heart. He will immediately reciprocate with you and give you the knowledge. But if you want to forget about God and do your own thing, then why He should show Himself? That's the thing, you see, that's the difference between inanimate and animate object. You know, we are animate conscious beings, which means we have a minute, independent free will. And there's a proper use and abuse. The abuse of our free will is to act separate from God and think we can enjoy. And the proper use of our free will is to come to this understanding, yes, I understand now, I'm your servant, let me be your servant. And then when you come to that understanding, immediately Krishna will reciprocate. Like we were just learning, even to the holy name, everything will be revealed to you. Yes? So I hope I could be of some little service this evening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudeva ki jai.